Hi, everyone. Very happy to be with you tonight. I'm Alexis Maletin from DataDome. I know I have a jacket and my title says go to market, but we're going to talk a bit about technical stuff tonight. So we're going to deep dive in. We're going to talk about two topics. We're going to, of course, talk about MCP. We're going to discuss public MCP, not the MCPs that you're building internally for your internal tools, but the one that you're putting on the internet. So think about a brand. It can be New York Times, it's in this building, it can be Petco, e-commerce, whatever. You want to provide this new interface to the world, and this is what we're protecting. But before that, I want to discuss a little bit about agentic traffic, because we know that MCP is still quite new. And so there is a lot of lessons that we learned over time with agentic traffic that will be applicable to MCP as well. So very quickly, we all know that everything has changed over the last 2 years. I will say that our business also has changed. DataDome, which is not Datadog, I know a lot of people misconfuse, and we're both French companies. But DataDome, we are a bot protection system vendors. So the goal used to be, is it a human or is it a bot when a request was entering the website? Then it evolved to, when it's a bot, is it a bad bot or a good bot? A good bot being Google SEO, a bad bot being one of your competitors trying to abuse your website, scrape your pricing, and so on. And so now the big question is it an agent also? And what type of agent? What are they doing? And is it a good thing or not based on what your business wants to do? And the problem with agent is that 80% of them are not declaring themselves. So if you think controlling a website, an MCP server, by just saying, oh yeah, I allowed ChatGPT to access it, it's done, that's not the point. The point is to block most of the guys, the bad guys that will try to, or the agent that will try to come to your website. And then as soon as they're blocked, it gives you granularity to allow or not some of them. So this is the way we are categorizing agent at DataDome. So there is a bunch of them. The first category is a server-side agent, meaning that the request is sent from OpenAI, Claude, whatever, an AI company server directly. There is one on the left, AI crawlers, pretty standard. The one in the middle, keep it in mind because that's the chatbot. And when we're talking about MCP, a lot of them right now are for ChatGPT apps. And this is technically the same thing in the background than the one in the middle. There is the autonomous agent on the right side, which are also triggered from the servers of the companies, but will be autonomous, display a browser, execute JavaScript, and so on. I don't have time today to go into the technical details of pros and cons of each of them in terms of security, but just wanted to highlight it. On the other side, we have the agentic browsers, everything executed on the client side with two main categories, full browsers, meaning Atlas, Comet, and the extension one that directly plug into your Chrome. The tricky part with these agentic browsers is by definition, by design, it's built to blur the line between a human and an automation. So when in the past we used to protect a website, an API, whatever, from credential stuffing, from brute forcing, well, now it becomes more complex to detect, is it a human trying to do that, or did they pass over to the machine, and now it's automated. So a lot of new challenges are coming in, but I will not go too much in details of each of them. What I can tell you is that not all agents are created equals. Some are the good guys, sorry. ChatGPT is one of them. They were the first one to split their crawlers based on the intent. So a crawler for foundational model, a crawler for a question that a user is asking in the chatbot, and so on. They were also from the beginning publishing their IP addresses, meaning that they provide a strong identification mechanism to the website, the APIs, the MCP. They even developed a protocol, which is a webbot auth, which is a cryptographic way to sign the request and say, this is a request from us, it's 100% sure. Just for you to know, this webbot auth is not yet available in MCP. So that's the good guy. And then, I'm sorry, I have to blame some people, but the bad guy, that's a very bad one, actually. Grok is behaving like a fraudulent bot. If you're going on Grok and you're asking a question, go check that on a website, it will trigger 12 different requests in average. It will try to impersonate different type of system with different user agent, different IP addresses to try to have at least one of the requests going through. They bypass the robot text file, which is the case for a lot of the agent, by the way, but really the bad guy. So when you're brands, companies, it's important to understand that, because you don't want to miss the business that agents are bringing you, but at the same time, you want to be cautious at the potential issues and threats that they're bringing with it. And I want to discuss, before we go to MCP, about agent trust, which is actually a new category definition by Forrester. It's going to be in the next wave. So it means that it's becoming a mainstream concept. And for DataDome, there is two components major in agent trust. The first one is identification. I think we talked a lot about it recently, right before. What is this agent? Is he the one that is proclaiming he is or not? And then we're going to talk about the intent after. So if we focus once again on the identity, when we're talking about analytics, we don't care about a strong identification. If in your Google Analytics, you're using user agent to understand where the traffic is coming from, I believe that that's probably enough. Maybe you will be skewed for 2-5% max, but that's okay. When we're talking about security, we need strong identification. Obviously, user agent is not one of them. When Gemini and have evolved a bit, but at the beginning, they were just providing user agent that we are Gemini based on this. Yeah, but we don't care. Anybody can impersonate that. So we're not going to give authorization based on this information. On the other side of the spectrum, you have WebBot auth, reverse DNS, IP ranges, and so on. So very important. And at DataDome, we provide configuration for agent only with strong identification. Otherwise, it will be a problem of security. And then you can have granular control of where you want to send people. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because we don't have so much time. But basically, do you want to allow OpenAI to access your product pages if you're an e-commerce website? Do you want to allow them to convert and transact on your website? While for others, agent, you might want something different. A bit of learning, because I've been personally discussing with hundreds of our clients around this topic over the last year. I will say that Q3, Q4 last year, the big question was, should we open our catalog of product to this agent, mainly OpenAI? And there was a kind of consortium that, yes, we want to, because the business doesn't want to miss this revenue opportunity. I will even say that it was the first time in my life that I saw publicly traded companies trading their intellectual properties, meaning their prices, all these type of things that usually they spend time and money protecting for not missing the trend of AI. So it was a very interesting time. Q1 of 26, it's about transacting. Everybody is asking, how do we transact? There is a lot of things happening. You probably know it, but OpenAI is more of a closed ecosystem, a bit Apple style. They're doing their own protocol with specific companies. As of today, you have probably 6 or 7 shops that you can transact with OpenAI directly. Some Shopify, and I think you have Etsy, who's also doing one of them. On the other side, ChatGPT is losing market shares. A lot of people, I'm sure in this room, switch to Claude. And what does that mean? Well, it means that we might see a new potential winner in the transaction space for agent in general. And if I have to place my bet, I will put it on MCP plus UCP, UCP being the new Google protocol that was released a month and a half ago. So still pretty early, but we're expecting 26 to have a huge evolution on all this transacting and more general use case, while last year it was a lot about product discovery. Very quickly, before we turn to MCP, it's not because you identify an agent that this agent is doing good stuff. So that's a great example. If you go on ChatGPT and you say, go check the price on this URL, it will give you the price information, the product information. If you ask them, now do the same for these 100 URLs on this website, it will say, no, it's against the privacy policy, it's against the robot text file, so I will not do it. Then you ask him, okay, so help me build a Python script to get to my mean, and he will provide it to you. And that's a proof of concept where you can do some scraping with ChatGPT. So identification is not all of it. It's also about intent. Understand what we're doing. That's lucky for us what we've been doing for a long time at DataDome. It's our bread and butter. Understanding pattern, is this session or this like a bag of requests seems to be legit or suspicious. So identity plus intent. Another one that we're starting to see some vulnerability testing, done through agents. Actually, I was talking this morning with one of our customers about MCP. They released their ChatGPT apps. I will, of course, not say the name because of what I'm going to say after. They are not routing their MCP traffic through their regular security stack, meaning WAF, gateway, and so on, because they're like, no, it's coming from ChatGPT, it's under control. No, guys, if there is a way to go around it, you will be exploited. So very important that you treat all this agentic traffic at least in the same way that you're treating normal traffic, and I will say even more. Okay, let's talk a bit about MCP protocol. So I've been discussing that with more than 50 customers. It started a lot around the summer. At the beginning, I didn't know why everybody was asking questions about this around this topic. In October, we understood that it's because of the ChatGPT apps. And I will say that 95% of the conversation I had were really ChatGPT apps and unauthenticated. We're not talking about this MCP where you're sharing your credential, logging in, and can do sensitive stuff. So we're going to treat about these two topics, authenticated, non-authenticated. However, and I'm sure you know this, it's a very early technology evolving very fast. So this is accurate today, meaning March 26. In 1 or 2 months, I'm not sure I will be able to say the same thing. So first topic is authenticated MCP. So you log in with your credential. You can probably do actions, modify your account, create stuff, delete stuff, and so on. The main number one problem was authentication, and especially in Q3, Q4, it was terrible. The zero-auth protocol was not ready. They delivered the version 2. There was a mechanism, I don't know if they created for it. Actually, I was not familiar with it before, but DCR, dynamic line registration, that I think even on paper doesn't work. And the number one issue was the fact that the application server, the MCP server, was both the identity server and the application server. So they created a new one, CIMD. I'm going to be very transparent. I haven't read all the different stuff about it. It came late Q4. It's becoming a bit more mainstream. It separates both identity and application. But overall, the main concern with this authenticated MCP is a prompt and command injection. And that can happen through a lot of different ways, especially when we're talking about MCP. It can be clients connected to different MCP and each MCP server poisoning each other. We had a very strong POCs with a WhatsApp MCP being poisoned by a weather MCP. If you haven't read it, it's pretty interesting. It could be the user that is saying something that is misinterpreted by the LLM, and so the end result action is not what the user was intending to do. It can be something that the LLM is looking for on the internet, and that information on a website is poisoning the MCP. So there is a lot of different ways to end up in this situation. And overall, we've been thinking a lot about this topic. I think it's way too early, but the main problem is the discrepancy between the action, the intent of the user, and the end result. And so today, if I'm sending a message on WhatsApp, on one of my system, marketplace or whatever, that's not a sensitive action. The sensitivity is into the login. So as soon as I was able to prove that I'm Alexis, I'm the one with my identity, then sending a message is not a sensitive action. I know I'm sending a message. I have the UI that gives me the feedback. I will not make mistake, and not somebody around me will do it will manipulate and send messages for me. Think about MCP. Tomorrow, maybe I'm asking something to my agent. It results into sending messages. If he's sending one message, Alexis is sending one message to someone he used to send messages to, okay, that's a normal behavior. However, if Alexis is now starting to send 20 messages in 2 minutes, contacts that he never talked to before, that's probably a weird pattern. And so our assumption is all the technique of fraud that today is done for very sensitive type of action, a payment with a Face ID, selling a stock option, things like this. This technique of fraud detection and looking at pattern, and is that a normal behavior or not in this context of users, will become much more mainstream. And maybe tomorrow, if these systems detect that you're sending a lot of messages to new contacts, meaning you're spamming, you're sending phishing to them, maybe they will ask for validation, even though it's not considered as a sensitive action today. Which brings me to the last topic, which is a non-authenticated MCP. So think about the ChatGPT apps as a #1 use case. Few problems. The first one is how do you configure access to your MCP? Allow listing. Web button doesn't exist. You have ChatGPT who updated the IP addresses many times over the last 6 months. It's a bit more stable now, but that can be a challenge already. So this sounds trivial, but it's not so trivial. And actually, with ChatGPT, it's not too complex, but with other vendor, it might be more complex in the future. The second challenge is the rate limiting. All the requests are coming from OpenAI IP addresses. They're all the same. There is not a lot of information, even though MCP has enriched metadata. And so the problem is, how do you identify a session or a user? Up until recently, there was 0 option. There is an MCP session ID in the protocol. It's terrible. OpenAI is now providing 2 new information, an OpenAI session ID, which is not the MCP one, but a different one. It's nice, but had many regression over the last few months. So we are not basing our security, our detection engine on this. And there is another one, which is the OpenAI subject ID, actually not subject ID. We're investigating right now. It has some interesting stuff, but it's not perfect. So what does that mean? It means that when you're looking from a security standpoint about all the requests coming into an MCP server, you need to find ways to detect if this seems to be abuse of patterns of abuse or not. So we're looking at the intent one more time. Is it normal to access this tool as many times per second for this service? And if not, maybe we want to consider that to be suspicious. The problem is we cannot just hard block the request, because in this setup, which is different when you're authenticated, but in this setup, we don't have user identification. So if we hard block, there is a risk that we hard block a lot of real users. And so the only way that we're working on with customers right now is potentially to slow down the request. So we start to see like suspicious requests coming in. Maybe for the next 5 minutes, every request with the same pattern will be suspicious. Instead of hard blocking them and hard blocking real users, we will potentially slow down the response, meaning that a real user will still get his final answer, but the economy for scraping, for an abuse, for vulnerability scanning will be not worth it. That's what we're working on. Just a quick comment on the side. If we're only talking about ChatGPT apps, the response is pretty slow to get back to the SDK to display the results. So all of this is not so much of a concern today, but one more time, if you get outside of ChatGPT for your MCP, all of this become more and more concerning. And so maybe last slide to talk a bit about DataDome. So that's the value proposition we're delivering already today for our MCP protection, all the control, which agent can access which part of your website, your MCP, and so on. DDoS and rate limiting at a much more granular level. Right now, most of our customers, before they implemented that, they just put a rate limiting on all the MCP server. That's more for DDoS protection, but not for abuse. And one more time, scraping, credential stuffing, which is not very mainstream yet, but all this type of automated threat that existed in the past on the web will be applicable here as well. Thank you.